on this episode of the On Pace podcast.
Have you ever looked at a big goal, something like maybe writing a book, losing 50 pounds, or running a marathon, and you felt completely paralyzed by the sheer size of it? I mean, you're not alone. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you're focusing on the final outcome instead of the small steps that will get you there. Here's the thing though, progress is a product of small, repeated actions. You're listening to the On Pace podcast, and I'm your host, James Fuller. As a banker by day, I've been serving people for over 20 years, and helping others is one of the things that I love most. While banking is my day job, other pleasures include being a husband, dad, musician, runner, and most recently, a private pilot. My goal in life is to be an example of the best husband, dad, and Christian that my wife can be thankful for and my son can look up to. Not to mention I want to be able to keep up with him for at least a few more years. This podcast was created with one goal in mind, and that is to help and inspire others. I want the On Pace podcast to be motivational, encouraging, and educational. We will discuss topics of both personal and business nature, as well as interview individuals from various walks of life that have achieved some amazing things, all while overcoming challenges they faced and showing how they were able to build endurance. I encourage you to buckle up and enjoy the ride. Thank you for tuning in, and welcome to the On Pace podcast. Welcome to the On Pace podcast, the show where we explore big ideas, small steps, and everything in between. I'm your host, James Fuller, and today's episode is all about the idea that small hinges swing big doors. What does that mean, you ask? It's a reminder that small, consistent actions can create massive results over time. Whether it's personal growth, building a business, strengthening relationships, or improving your health, focusing on the little things can open big opportunities in your life. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's explore how you can identify and leverage these small hinges to transform your life. Before we get started, I would like to say thank you for listening to the podcast. This is the 27th episode and the second of 2025. If you'd like to follow the podcast, you can find it on Instagram at on.pace and on Facebook at the On Pace Podcast. I've also put a few episodes on YouTube, and you can now subscribe there at Fuller Runs, which is also my personal handle on Instagram if you'd like to follow me there. If you would like to send an email, you can contact me by email at theonpacepodcast@icloud.com. I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to send me a message, and at any time on any of those messages, just shoot it on over. Now to get in today's episode. So recently I was sitting in a webinar for work that was hosted by Tennessee Bankers Association here in Tennessee. The guest speaker was Kara Sprouse, and she was giving a presentation on managing your mind and succeeding against stress. Don't we all need that? She made a statement that I've not been able to get away from. The statement was, small hinges swing big doors. I quickly jotted it down, sent it over to a few friends with a mind-blown emoji, and then began to dive deeper into the thought. There's actually several books, podcasts, and even an entire training curriculum that's referenced to this quote. Its origin, based on what I could find though, goes back to an American businessman and author by the name of Clement Stone. I'd heard the phrase many times before, but it didn't stand out to me like it did when it was packaged with a session in mind management and stress. The more I thought about it, the more apparent it became to me just how many big things in life are reliant on little things. For instance, a change of a few words in a sentence can give you much more impact or a completely different meaning for a reader. Knowing how to use a hair product can mean the difference in really curly hair or really frizzy hair. One wrong ingredient can mean the difference in a wonderful dish or meal and a disastrous one. I mean, we all remember Rachel and Friends with the whole trifle. No, you were not supposed to put the beef in the trifle. Getting up 1 hour early can increase your productivity at work. One system or application can change an entire process at work, making it more efficient, maybe, or more challenging. I would like to focus on 4 key areas when small actions can make a big difference. personal development, business, relationships, and health. So we're going to get started with personal development. Have you ever looked at a big goal, something like maybe writing a book, losing 50 pounds, or running a marathon, and you felt completely paralyzed by the sheer size of it? I mean, you're not alone. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you're focusing on the final outcome instead of the small steps that will get you there. Here's the thing, though. Progress is a product of small, repeated actions. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, explains this so beautifully. He says, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. The secret to success isn't doing something extraordinary. It's just doing something consistently. For example, let's take writing a book like I mentioned a minute ago. Instead of trying to write 50,000 words in a month, break it down. If you write just 300 words a day, a task that would probably take you around 15 minutes, you'd have a full draft in 6 months. Another example is a personal growth through reading. Let's say you want to read 12 books a year. That sounds like a really daunting task. I mean, for me, I'm a slow reader. But if you break it down, it's just 20 minutes of reading per day. Here's an actionable tip for you. Pick one small habit that you want to develop. Maybe it's meditating for 5 minutes, journaling a single thought each morning, or drinking a glass of water first thing when you wake up. Write it down, set a reminder, and commit to doing it every day. Watch how these small hinges swing big doors in your life. Now let's move into the business application. Small hinges are the backbone of success in the business world. Think about Apple. When Steve Jobs returned to the company in the late 1990s, Apple was struggling. One of its first moves was to simplify their product line. Instead of focusing on a dozen products, he streamlined operations to focus on just 4. 1 desktop and 1 laptop each for professionals and consumers. That one decision, seemingly small at the time, helped Apple regain its footing and become the powerhouse it is today. Another example is the story of Howard Schultz, the man behind Starbucks. When Schultz took over, he focused on small but pivotal detail, creating a third place for people, a space between home and work. That small idea reshaped the coffee industry and made Starbucks the global brand that it is today. The last example I can think of is the story of a red paperclip. In 2005, Kyle McDonald, he's a Canadian blogger, set out on a unique mission to trade a single red paperclip for something far more valuable, ultimately aiming to get a house. Inspired by the childhood game of trading, Kyle posted his first trade online offering the red paperclip in exchange for a fish-shaped pen. Remarkably, someone accepted. From there, Kyle continued trading up for increasingly valuable items. His next trades included a doorknob, a camping stove, and a generator. Each time he found someone willing to swap for something slightly better. As his project gained attention, the trades got even bigger. For example, he traded a snowmobile, a recording contract, and eventually a speaking role in a Hollywood movie. By the end of his journey, though, Kyle had made 14 trades over a span of a year. His final trade was for the movie role, which he exchanged for a 2-story farmhouse in Kipling. Not only did he achieve his goal, but the town celebrated his accomplishment with a big event, and Kyle became a symbol of creativity and determination. His story is a fascinating example of how small opportunities with persistence and clever thinking can lead to remarkable outcomes. What began as just a simple idea turned into an international phenomenon, showcasing the power of barter and human connection. For entrepreneurs listening, here's something to consider. What's the one thing that you can improve in your business? Maybe it's sending follow-up emails to customers, optimizing one step in your production process, or improving your customer service experience. Here's an actionable exercise. Write down your top 3 business challenges right now. Then for each one, identify a small action you can take this week to move closer to a solution. Remember, small hinges swing big doors. Now let's talk about relationships. Relationships thrive or fail on the small things. Think about it. It's not the grand gestures that sustain a relationship over time. It's the everyday moments of connection. For example, Dr. John Gottman, one of the leading researchers on relationship, found that the secret to a successful marriage isn't lavish vacations or expensive gifts, even if those are nice. It's something much simpler. Turning towards your partner in the small moments. This could be responding when they share a story, giving them a smile, or showing appreciation for something they did. These small interactions build trust and intimacy over time. Our friendships work the same way. A quick thinking of you text, remembering a friend's birthday, or making time for a short phone call can go a really long way. Let me share a personal story with you. When I was a kid, we were very poor. We had very little, and at one point, we even lived on $12 for food a week. Now, that would hardly buy a meal today. To this day, I still don't love spaghetti. We used to eat it and then reheat it multiple days on end. You can definitely make spaghetti on the cheap, but I still don't like it. One evening, we had some great friends from church that came over and left groceries on our porch. That meant so much to a family that was struggling. Another scenario I can think of is just a simple thank you card. We have a lady at our bank named Joanna that is so well known in the community for sending personal handwritten cards that when asked in a crowded room who all had received a card, nearly everyone in the room put their hand up. It's a simple act, but has big impacts. This definitely probably contributed to her record month last month in loan closings. I have a goal to try to send more personal handwritten cards myself to bank's clients. It truly does mean a lot when I receive them, and think of the joy that you could put on someone else's face. So here's a challenge. Who in your life could use a small act of kindness today? Maybe it's your partner, a family member, or a coworker. Send them a quick text, leave a note of encouragement, or just take a moment to listen to them. These small hinges can swing big doors in your relationship. Finally, let's dive into health and wellness. A lot of people think that getting healthy requires big changes, like cutting out entire food groups or spending hours in the gym. But in reality, it's the small, consistent habits that make the difference. Let's take weight loss as an example. Research shows that the small changes, like switching from soda to water or taking the stairs instead of the elevator, can add up to significant results over time. Here's another example. Walking just 10 minutes after meals. This simple habit can help stabilize blood sugar, improve digestion, and even boost your mood. It's such a small commitment, but the benefits are enormous. Or consider sleep. Improving your sleep hygiene does not require an overhaul of your routine. Small actions like turning off the screen 30 minutes before bed or keeping a consistent sleep schedule, getting up and going to bed at the same time, those things can make a huge difference in your energy and your overall health. So here's an action plan. Pick one area of your health you want to improve. Maybe it's drinking more water, getting more movement, running a race, or improving your sleep. Set a small achievable goal and track your progress. Over time, you'll see how these small hinges can open big doors for your health and well-being. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. Big change doesn't happen all at once. It's the small, consistent actions that create lasting results. Whether you're focusing on personal development, building a business, strengthening your relationships, or improving your health, remember to start small. Identify the hinges in your life, the little things that have potential to open the big doors, and then take action. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the On Pace podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating and review, and help us grow the podcast. Follow us on social media at on.pace on Instagram, the On Pace Podcast on Facebook, and Fuller Runs on YouTube, and me personally on Instagram. If you want to send an email, you can do that at theonpacepodcast@icloud.com. If you'd like to support the show, you can actually do that by clicking Support the Show at the bottom of the show notes. This will give you the opportunity to make a monthly contribution to the show. Proceeds are used to help curb the cost of the podcast, and supporters will be mentioned on future podcast episodes. Lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who might also find it helpful. And remember, small hinges swing big doors. Until next time, I hope you find your pace and stick to it. Take care.